say, mandate the mask. Say, this is what you have to do when you're out. Make sure you encourage it being done. Look, George, you and I know, and I think you do too as well, the words of a president matter.
Absolutely.
No matter whether they're good, bad, or indifferent, they matter. And when a president doesn't wear a mask or makes fun of folks like me when I was wearing a mask for a long time, then, as you know, people say, well, it mustn't be that important. But when a president says, I think this is very important, for example, I walked in here with this mask, but I have one of the N95 masks underneath it. I left it in my dressing room, the room I was in before I got here. And so I think it matters what we say. And we're now learning that children are getting the virus, not with as serious consequences. But there's been no studies done yet on vaccines for children. So there's a long way to go, but we can make progress in the meantime and save lives. And last point I'll make, if you listen to the head of the CDC, he stood up and he said, while we're waiting for a vaccine, and he held up a mask. You wear this mask, you'll save more lives between now and the end of the year than if we had a vaccine. It's estimated by every major study done from the University of Washington to Columbia that if in fact we wore masks, we could save between now and the end of the year 100,000 lives.
And avoid lockdowns?
And avoid lockdown, yes. You don't have to lock down if you're wearing the mask.
Let's get a question on the economy. Anthony Argyrakis.
I hope I answered your question.
From Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, Republican.
I know it.
For President Trump.
Thank you, George. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. You stated that anyone making less than $400,000 will not see one single penny of their taxes raised.
That's right.
But also state that you are going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. The Trump tax cuts reduces taxes for the majority of workers. I would argue not enough. What is your plan for either extending the tax cuts for the middle class or creating a new plan that further reduces those taxes?
I carry this card with me. When I said the Trump tax cuts, about 1.3 trillion of the $2 trillion in his tax cuts went to the top 1/10 of 1%. That's what I'm talking about eliminating, not all the tax cuts that are out there. And by the way, if you just take a look, we reduced the corporate tax rate from 35%, and Democrats and Republicans who were in office thought it should come down to 28%. He reduced it to 21%. You have 91 out of every of the Fortune 500 companies not paying a single solitary penny. If you raise the corporate tax just back to 28%, which is a fair tax, you'd raise $1.3 trillion by that one act. If you made sure that people making over 400 grand paid what they did in the Bush administration, 39.6%, you would raise another, it goes up to, let me get the exact number here, about another $92 billion. So you can raise a lot of money to be able to invest in things that can make your life easier, make you change your standard of living by making sure you have affordable health care, by making sure you're in a situation where you're able to send your kid to school, and if you have a student debt, you can deal with it, making sure that your home, you can pay your mortgage. You got 20 million people right now.
Mr. President, let me press you on that, though.
Sure.
You're going to raise the corporate tax, you're going to raise taxes on the wealthy. Is it wise to do even that when the economy is as weak as it is right now? Another 900,000 people.
That's a great question. Moody's did an analysis of my detailed analysis of my tax plan and my economic plan. They said, I will in 4 years, Moody's, Wall Street, said I will create 18.6 million new jobs, good paying jobs, number one. Number two, and I'll increase, the GDP will grow by $1 trillion more than would under Trump, and 7 million more jobs than under Trump. And the reason is when you allow people to get back in the game and have a job, everything moves. Everything moves. Right now, you got the opposite. You had last year, during this pandemic, you had the wealthiest billionaires in the world, in the nation. They made another $700 billion. $700 billion. He talks about a V-shaped recovery. It's a K-shaped recovery. If you're on the top, you're going to do very well. And the other thing and if you're in the bottom, or you're in the middle or the bottom, your income is coming down. You're not getting a raise. I don't know what you do. You may get a raise. I hope you're a billionaire. But all kidding aside, but it's about growing the economy. And George, the way out, the reason why I'm so optimistic about economic recovery, more than I've ever been, is we have these four crises happening all at once, and one helps the other. For example, we're going to invest a great deal of that money into infrastructure and into a green infrastructure. We're going to put 500,000 charging stations on new highways we're building and old highways we're building. We're going to own the electric market. You know as well as I do from your days, the old days, where the president spends about $600 billion a year on government contracts. Everything from making sure they have aircraft carriers to automobile fleets for the in the United States. If you make and it's not violation of any international trade agreement, made in America. If you actually insist that whatever that product is, made in America, including the material that goes into the product, it's estimated we're going to create somewhere between another 4 and 6 million jobs just by doing that. But what's happening now? Under his trade policy, a lot of this is going overseas. You get a benefit from going overseas if you have much of it being made overseas. So if you send it overseas, you get a 10% tax increase on a product. If you make it in America and you bring it back, you get a 10% growth. If you bring back a company and you're going to open up an old facility, you get a 10% tax credit for all you invested. That actually works, George.
So there's not going to be any delay on the tax increases?
No, well, I got to get the votes. That's why, the one thing that I have this strange notion. We are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Got to take a quick break. We'll be right back.